Hello everyone, and welcome to Catch-Up Ramblings. It should be a nice short one today for two simple reasons. One, we don't actually have any YouTube questions. We managed to get through all of them on Monday, which is actually quite rare that we managed to do that. And secondly, I am very, very, very tired. I have worked a very long last couple of days, and I'm very glad that we do only have a short, sharp section of Discord questions to get through, because I don't think I'm fit for anything more. I'm joined by Foxo and Dragon, as we usually are, for these events on Friday. So, without further ado, let's crack on.
Greetings, I'm Foxo. According to some people, I'm Hitler, and some people, I'm Stalin. But no, I'm Foxo.
And according to me, she's just the mad woman over there with 2,000 guillotines to her face and a Lynx-class battlecruiser that she got from somewhere.
How did I tell you about what a lynx was?
Yeah, it's basically a lion, but with more speed and less armor.
No, because it's usually got 15-inch guns.
Oh. I always thought the Lynxes were 16-inch armor. I thought that's why they always kept battering my battleships whenever they met them.
No, that was normally your designs.
Also, it's also the fact that they in naval work at the time, they were really, really efficient.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because
To be fair, they still are.
At the time, speed was really key.
It still is, but
It still is.
Yeah. Well, we haven't seen how the new version of naval rework and the new naval thing will work. That'll be interesting to try out.
That's because I've rebuilt how Navy works. And...
Yeah. Anyway, so, typical episode. Question 5, related to question 4. Do you think having destroyers, even cruisers and battleships, to escort/screen convoys is too overpowered and unnecessary, and the task of screening convoys should fall on corvettes, frigates, and even destroyer escorts, since the fleet destroyer is designed to screen battle lines, carrier groups, or even capital ships? Well, in regards to, I'll deal with the cruisers and battleships first. You need those to deal with the surface threat, which was absolutely extant right up until about 1943-44. There were cruisers by Hipper-class cruisers into the Atlantic in 42-43. Everyone forgets this. Just because the battleships were up in Norway doesn't mean that there weren't German surface raiders cruising regularly into the North Atlantic until that period. And until that becomes a non-threat, you absolutely need cruisers and battleships to escort the convoys.
I think you're being a bit too narrow. Just go. Because this is in general, not just in the Atlantic, right? Yeah.
It is in general, but I did just want to point that out. I was using the Atlantic as an example. I said it's there to counter a surface threat, and the North Atlantic was the example. Like, if there is a surface threat, you need heavy surface assets.
So, do not ask yourself what is motivation to protect the convoy. Ask yourself, what threat is the convoy facing, and what do I need to face that threat?
Yeah, this is war. Efficiency isn't. Yeah, that's not.
If your enemy is bringing a Congo and you've got a bunch of flower class, how do you think that's going to end?
Like, congratulations, you've dealt with the RGN submarines, but yeah, that Congo is just going to look at you and laugh hysterically.
In the same way of a wolf pack versus a
quartet of battleships,
a lone South Dakota, or a South Dakota and a pair of Northamptons, the submarines are going to look at that and go,
sink the capital ships with torpedoes and then surface and menace the convoy with gunfire.
And a carrier is just going to look at you and goes, so you haven't got any surface heavy anti-aircraft assets. Dive Bomber Squadron 1, Dive Bomber Squadron 2, Torpedo Bomber Squadron. Deal with them.
Yeah, this is... Yeah.
A corvette, a DDE, a sloop's gonna cry. Because at most, they've got a couple of 40 mil.
This is why you look at the escort groups assigned to North Atlantic, North Atlantic was the main convoy theatre for the Allies in terms of where the multi-axis threat existed, if we're going to be honest. And if you look at the way they managed the escorts groups and the way they formed up escorts for convoys throughout that entire period, you'll see that basically there would usually be at both ends a pool of ships available for escort duty, and the convoy escort will be pulled together based on available intelligence, convoy speed, aka because the speed would determine whether or not it was likely to be a better target for aircraft, submarines, or surface raiders. Because again, like I said, if it's a slower convoy, you are basically vulnerable to everything, because that's just the way slow convoys work. If you are a fast troop convoy, doing continuously about 13-14 knots, you're not so worried about submarines because they've basically got to get you well ahead of time, and they will get one shot. Once you are past a wolf pack, it's not going to be able to catch you up. The U-boats do not have the endurance for like more than a day of flank speed running. Their flank speed flat out is like 17 knots, and if you're doing 14, they're going to have to run for a full day at flank speed. And basically,
And if you're an ocean liner, it doesn't matter because no one can catch you anyway.
yeah, if you're an ocean liner, yeah, if you're an ocean liner, you're just like, fuck, I'm going. Bye. I'll see you lads in Liverpool.
Yeah.
But anyway,
basically, an ocean liner goes in World War One. Are you an invincible? No. Are you a splendid cat? No. Okay, I don't care. Bye.
yeah. Whereas, well, yes. Well, some of them do, not all of them. But anyway,
Even the 25 knot ones.
not. Bear in mind, not a lot of liners had broken past the 22 knot mark by the start of World War One. Don't forget, there was a core of liners that had, but the majority of liners were still 21 knots, give or take.
But the important thing about that 21 knots was it was 21 knots.
I know.
Which people. It's one of the things because, as you know,
we're getting a
I
little
brought
bit
it up recently.
sidetracked. I was trying to get.
But it's an important thing about convoy escort, though.
Yeah.
Where it's you've got to remember that when it comes to an escorting a convoy's cruising speed is much more important than the burst speed of any ship in that fleet.
Yep.
And the second part of one, which is why the cruise liners that didn't run in convoys, because nothing could keep up with their cruise speed. Yes, they're 21 knot ships, but they're cruising 21 knot ships.
It can sustain that indefinitely.
Yeah, until they run out of fuel. But an interesting thing is that for a lot of 42, 43, 44, well, 43, less 44, a lot of the Pacific convoys and troop convoys are also multi-axis threats. And what's really interesting is despite in the Atlantic, both the Royal Navy and US Navy attaching heavy surface escorts outside above the area fuses to free-floating hunter-killer groups
Who is trying to?
that aren't actually bound to a single convoy. Unless you're talking the early carrier battle group idea, you see the heavy escort units being fixed to a specific convoy.
Usually, it's something that must get through no matter what, like a heavy troop convoy or a convoy
And
of
it's like-
badly needed. Like you'll notice, the convoys the battleships are with are the ones the Germans really, really, really would like to not get through.
And the same thing happens in the South Pacific. But you don't see the floating escort groups in the South Pacific. It's just something I find interesting. That the same navies have two very different ASW doctrines
It
in
also
both theatres.
it's also because the ASW, the submarine threat in the Pacific, is radically different than the threat in the Atlantic. For the Allies. In the Pacific, you are dealing with lone wolf IJN captains opportunistically attacking a convoy because that's not their doctrine. That's not what they're there to do. So it'll be a single sub, which if you can drive off and or sink, that's it. Congratulations, threat's over with. Whereas in the Atlantic, it's the wolf packs are a thing. They are a coordinated operating force. You do have to treat them as, okay, we got one, where are the rest of his fucking friends? But anyway, what I was trying to get to was basically you need if you have a multi-axis threat as you do in the Atlantic, you need multi-axis forces, and for example, for certain convoys, like I mentioned, the fast troop convoys, destroyer escorts and corvettes are just not fast enough. They do not have the legs. Destroyers are your option. They're the only things with enough legs to keep up with a convoy moving at that speed for that time length.
That's why Duke of York did so much fixed convoy work, despite being in the Atlantic. Especially for the Arctic convoys.
The Arctic convoys are basically... The Arctic convoys are arguably the heaviest escorted, but that's because the threat is arguably heaviest.
Yeah.
It is the area with the heaviest threat. You have the heaviest surface threat, the heaviest air threat, and the heaviest well, no, you don't have the heaviest subsurface threat, but you have enough of a subsurface threat that it works with everything else that they're dealing with.
It's the place where you see actual combined armed warfare work with submarines.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Typical gunnery officer asks, do you think the USN is better off with one ship design class with the Gerald R. Ford than building a whole class of improved and mass constructible CVNs, since if they wanted Gerald R. Ford to be a whole ship class, then it'll take a while to make the base design for mass production? Gunnery officer, that's literally what's happening. That they are literally drumbeat building the Gerald R. Ford class. That's how the USN does nuclear carriers. But you're building a fucking nuclear...
They're planning to replace the Nimitz's wholesale with Fords.
But the way the USN has always done it ever since the USN has been building nuclear supercarriers, and we saw this with the Nimitz, you just continuously build whatever is your new class of nuclear supercarrier until you have replaced the last of the old class of nuclear supercarrier, and then you go again. So the Gerald R. Ford is the Gerald R. Ford is an improved and mass constructible version of the CVN, just like Nimitz was an improved and mass constructible version of Enterprise, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because the thing that people tend to forget,
I would say, is a bit more of a one-off prototype.
No,
that's
what I said.
But it's about that. So the thing about the CVNs is, especially the supercarriers, you have to understand that a lot of them are parts of classes in name only. And there is almost French levels of dimorphism across the fleet.
I would disagree with that.
Like, ships of the same class equipped with different catapult systems and different levels of technology. They're ostensibly the same class. Like,
how much of that flexibility is designed in from the start?
Like, to take into account the fact that,
if
that's the interesting thing, is that because of how long the supercarriers take to build, so much, especially on the electronic side of things, there's such big gaps between laying them down and them entering service, and because they're staggered, that you get ships of the same class. One's built in the smartphone era, one's built in the flip phone era, and there's several generations of electronics between them.
Yeah, the Nimitzes. This is the thing you see with the Nimitzes.
There is enough space on board that they are going to be continuously upgraded.
Yeah, it's not French levels of difference. You look at a Nimitz externally, you go, that's a Nimitz. You will have different levels of capability depending on which systems are fitted at any given time. But the important factor is they are designed to fit several generations of systems on them. It's also
they know that's going to happen. They are designing in that upgradability.
It's also
even the older ones can be upgraded to the same spec as the newer ones.
And politely, politely, they don't even.
Yes. So running off there, it's better. unless you're talking really broad strokes, don't think of the big super carriers as entire classes. Think of them as individual ships
No,
that are a gradual improvement on each other.
no, no,
Because the
no,
oldest
no.
can be brought up to the same spec as the newest.
No, that's wrong as
Yeah.
well. No, I'm sorry. No, I'm gonna have to shut you both down. No, the Nimitz class are all the same class of ship. There are some variations between the sisters, but they are all recognizably Nimitz class carriers. They all have...
All got different capability.
Not really, no. They all can carry roughly pretty much the same amount of aircraft and launch and recover those aircraft. And anything else apart from that is basically irrelevant on whether or not they're the same class of
But they
ship.
have different generations of CNC, different generations of radar, different
That
generations of Seawiz,
Radar
and
That
point
doesn't-
defense
Graded.
missiles.
That doesn't matter. The same basic hull shape and design are the same. Of course, the sensor fits in CNC are going to be different based on exactly what era of Nimitz it is, but that's not surprising. However, it is still a Nimitz. It's not a different class of ship. You put the two side by
can
side. You put the
upgrade your-
let me finish. You put those two. You put the first Nimitz and the last Nimitz next to each other. You don't go, oh, that's a totally different ship. You go, no, that's a Nimitz and that's a Nimitz, and that's my point. Yes, I completely understand where Fox was coming from. However, I am going to push back on that. It's not like putting Jean-Barry next to Charles Martel and you go, fuck me, they look different. You put two Nimitzes next to each other, you go, nope, that's a Nimitz and that's a Nimitz. One's more modern than the other, but that's
My
those are both
counterpoint to
Nimitz.
that would be it's actually a better example is more comparing HMS Newcastle to HMS Edinburgh.
Like, I was a bit
These are ships.
overzealous.
These ships are the same class, but they have different loadout fits. Both are technically town class,
Mhm.
but notably, since one was made later, it had improved equipment, improved internal layouts.
Mhm.
These things do change slightly amongst each ship.
Yes.
Or it's like the county class. You have multiple sub-classes.
That's true. I'm
Fox,
not-
though, saying that they're more like the French ones is incorrect, yes, but saying that they are all identical isn't correct.
I did.
Just to clarify over, like take an example, is that you have over time as the design's improved, it's the same hull, but it's an improved design, improved equipment, improved radar. Good God, look how fast computers have evolved since the first Nimitzes were laid down and entered service.
No, hang on. One
Like,
sec.
It's
Hang
just
on.
There's
'cause you
hundreds
can-
of orders
I-
You can
I just
upgrade
looked it
equipment.
up.
That's
I
fine.
just looked it up. Nimitz had two complex overhauls, one in 83 to 84 and another in 98 to 2001,
So-
both of which, let's see here, basically replaced her entire radar suite.
So,
Yes, I get that.
That kind
but
of
that doesn't.
goes along with what Fox was saying about that you
Yeah,
can
that's not. You've kind of.
upgrade stuff. No one's argued that
Yeah.
you can't upgrade.
You
that.
are somewhat missing the
Okay.
forest for the trees, my friend. A little bit. That's not what Fox is saying.
Okay. Because what I'm saying is that because they're built almost bespoke,
No, they're not.
or because they're built in very, very small production numbers, and despite being in the same class, there's enough time gap between them that you quite literally have different Nimitzes having different generations of computers
Yes,
and
that's fine.
different generations of radar coming on.
That's fine.
And because you have 1 to 2 ships that are that generation, you shouldn't treat them as one unless you're doing massive generalizations. You don't treat it like these capabilities are standardized across the Nimitz fleet. You should go, oh, which carrier is it? It's that carrier has that capability.
No,
And it's got those systems on it.
Absolutely not, because those systems are, if you want my honest opinion, fundamentally irrelevant to the thing that makes the Nimitz class the Nimitz class. Their catapults, their flight deck, and their arresting gear, their lifts, and their hangars. And as long as those capabilities,
I would disagree because...
can I finish my point?
Right.
As long as the capabilities offered by those systems are roughly equivalent across all of the carriers, that is the only thing that really matters for unifying them as a class, because that is the important bit. It's not like where you would have, with the Burks, you need to have Flight 1, Flight 2A, Flight 3, because the difference in sensors, the way their VLS is arranged, how much VLS they carry, that fundamentally matters in a big way for dealing with the capabilities of the ship and what it brings to the table. You have to have that distinction. It matters. Whereas with the Nimitzers, it fundamentally doesn't matter whether one has the up-to-date CIC or not. It doesn't matter whether one has the better radar or not. What matters is, can it cycle the aircraft in the same way as its sisters? If it can, it's a Nimitz. That's all that matters.
But the generation of Nimitz defines what aircraft it can use.
No, it
And
doesn't.
what generation... It does,
Why?
because... Okay.
On.
Okay, let
Because,
Foxer finish. Yeah, let Foxer finish.
because
Yep.
especially with the advent of F-35, and a lot of the munitions the last generation of Gen 4 aircraft and Gen 5 aircraft have, there is a split between, okay, these Nimitzes have the new communications and CACs, they have the new radars, they can operate and coordinate these aircraft, and they can do stuff like be the targeting hubs for missiles fired by the rest of the fleet. They have the modern version. They have the
But
modern
my-
versions of.
My
I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically modern interfleet information networks, so they can use the modern missiles versus the missiles from 20 years ago. And
Or-
when you're talking about it can carry two different generations of aircraft with different capabilities. The new ones have been modified, especially with stuff like, oh, what's the name? The newest one, well, the last one.
There's
was Reagan.
fundamentally nothing stopping you from retrofitting one of the older Nimitzes with those same
That's
capabilities.
not. Yes, but
They've
that's
got
not.
the space, they've got the
Yeah, but
the area for it. It's just a matter of how much useful life is left on the hull, and would
But
we
that's not
get enough worth out of it to make it worth doing?
yeah, that's not the issue in this case, because we're talking about in the present, in this moment. It doesn't matter if the old hull can have that capability in 2 years of refit. It's okay, war started now. What aircraft can this carrier fly?
But
I would
it has
argue
the
that
space, it
I
should
would
still be the same class.
I would argue that, given we're talking about class distinctions here, not capability, I would argue that no, that does matter. Since the whole point of the discussion here is whether the Nimitzers are one class of ship or a series of different ships grouped under a similar hull form. Whereas that's the point I think Turrets is trying to make, that you're not disagreeing with each other. You're just kind of missing the meetup. It's not about capability, it's about whether they're the same class of ship, and if you accept Foxo that yes, the older hulls could be upgraded to match the newer ones, then at that point, they are all the same class of ship. Because if they weren't, you wouldn't be able to do that.
And you're going to, there will be some differences in, like, for instance, where this wire is run. But you're going to have that on any ship class. There's always some distinction. But all the key major points are either the same or can be retrofitted to be the same.
But my point is that these are a class of 10 ships built over 40 years.
Okay. That's okay. They are.
They might share the same hull,
Mhm,
and you might be able to modernize them,
mhm.
but each one is different.
No, they're not.
Because there is between them iterative design of this works, this doesn't. We'll modify the next one to have the bit that works. There's iterative design there.
Not to the extent that it
That
breaks
comes
up.
up with Harry S. Truman and Ronald Reagan,
Not
from what I'm seeing.
not to the extent that it makes them separate ships out of a different class.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
gonna-
some people.
th-
Some
there is
people. Some people do like to put Harry S. Truman and Ronald Reagan into their own little pocket. But I sit there and I slap those people, going, "No, those are Nimitzers. Sit the fuck down."
Yeah.
But
Especially
point is,
considering
that-
because from Nimitz herself, we can see that they can be upgraded. She was upgraded twice.
But I will just point out, at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, to boil it down to the barest nub, this is a matter of opinion, not fact. This is not something that we can ever really definitively answer. We can only reach a consensus on it. And if we can't reach a consensus, there's nothing wrong with that. We're not arguing over a point of fact.
Yeah, but I just think it's... When it comes to answering the original question this is about, especially when we talk about the Nimitz class in a specific time period, when all the ships are in service. Saying a Nimitz has turned up is a lot like saying a super carrier has turned up.
Well, yes.
Because there's a range of capabilities at that specific point in time that Nimitzes can have.
Not really. It does this. They all do the same thing. Exactly the same thing. They can all carry the same aircraft. They can all do the same capability. In terms of the carrier role. Anything else is just nice extras. They can all yeet things off the end of a flight deck and recover those things they yeeted later once they've gone and blown things up.
Yes, but there's been so much more to carrier operations than that for the past 100 years.
Yes and no.
The way I'm viewing it is
I feel like we're
the
going in. I feel
systems
like we are going in
are sort
circles
of-
here. So I am gonna.
Are sort of arbitrary.
I am gonna put a kibosh on this. I'm sorry.
So I'd just like to make... Can I just make a request to your typical gunner officer to say, if you're gonna ask a question about the broad Nimitz class, can you give us the name of the carrier?
No, the broad
So
Nimitz
just
class.
say Nimitz itself. Because then we know exactly what we're working with.
I mean, it doesn't really matter that much. It's a super carrier. But but I will let Foxo put this in there. For me personally, I'm not bothered either way. Do what you want, but you know, she's a co-host. She has the right to add addendums. Typical gunnery officer. Opinions on the Type 92 machine gun. Why'd they call it a heavy machine gun, even though it only fires 7.7mm rounds? And also, why didn't they invent a belt fed system instead of a 30-round clip, and therefore didn't use the high rate of fire to good use? Because whether something is a light or heavy machine gun is not caliber dependent. That's not what makes something a light or heavy machine gun. Everyone thinks of heavy machine guns nowadays as 12.7 or 14.5mm, because those are the heavy machine gun calibers that have persisted into the modern day. But during World War One, the interwar period, World War II, and for a little bit after it, the heavy machine gun, or the only thing you had to be to qualify as a heavy machine gun, was to be a positioned, crew-fed weapon. Crew-served weapon, I should say. Not attached to and not designed to be attached to an infantry squad. The Vickers machine gun falls into this category. The MG42 when it's operating, an MG34 when they're operating separately as crew-served weapons, not as part of a squad, fall into that category. The Maxim gun for the Russians. The 30 cal the 30 cal does it because the US basically didn't have a rifle caliber or nearly rifle caliber heavy machine gun. They'd been stuck with the Browning M2 for so long they just stuck with it. But apart from the US, every single combatant during the Second World War fielded a rifle caliber heavy machine gun in one form or another. That's right, Foxo, isn't it? I've not got that wrong. I think you're the
It boils down to the heavy machine gun's not a defined term. Isn't defined by the weapon used. It's defined by the role it's for.
So I was mostly right there. I just want to make sure I'm actually not talking out my ass for once.
You give a complicated that heavy machine gun's a role, not a
Yeah.
set of statistics.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of the Vickers heavy machine guns, and don't get me wrong, the Vickers heavy machine gun of World War One fame is a heavy water-cooled machine gun. Most of those are trained in British 303.
Yeah.
While yes, you did have 12.7 Vickers heavy machine guns, it's the job the machine gun's doing, not the stats of the machine gun.
Yep.
Sort of like how the Browning
Actually-
30 cal was also a heavy machine gun.
One minor correction, that is actually a classification for them.
Yeah.
Do they use full power cartridge versus low power cartridge?
Yes.
This is noticeable with the Maxim, the fact that did use full power cartridges compared to other machine guns, which didn't use full powered.
Sort of the assumption is that you use rifle rounds. They use rifle. Because that's the advantage of a heavy machine gun. It uses your basic rifle ammo. Because interestingly, in the Burmese army and the British Indian army, the Bren gun in specific units was classified as a heavy machine gun. Because it was used in the heavy machine gun role, not the stats of the weapon made it a heavy machine gun.
Yeah.
Same
Now-
way in the Pacific, the bar sometimes got classified as a heavy machine gun.
Now, I will just say in regards to the rest of it, also we've covered the whole 7.7 rounds, but it's not that the Japanese didn't have access to belt feeding for their machine guns. They did. Some of their machine guns they used during the war were belt fed. The thing with the 92, I think there was a doctrinal reason they went with the clips. I think it's because it's basically
It's not a doctoral reason.
lineage of the design, I think.
It's a material science reason. Early belts, as the Japanese had learnt in World War One, were absolute shite in tropical environments. Because of what they were made for, and early rubbers and plastic, and the fact that most of them were stamped sheet metal, they broke down quickly and became unreliable in tropical environments. Hence why the Japanese shifted to using the clip and the hopper fed machine guns that didn't have that issue. And it also bypassed the rubber bottleneck.
Okay.
Because people forget southern China's tropical.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Typical gunner officer asks, do you believe the myth that the taking of Iwo Jima isn't absolutely worth it and worth the lives that the US lost there for a bunch of airfields? Do you believe the US plan has made a mistake? No, that myth is utterly stupid and I'm sick of people propagating it. It's an insult to those who died for it. And the lives that having it actually saved. Aircrew losses amongst B-29s went down significantly after it was captured. Never mind what it made possible in terms of fighter escort duty.
So the fundamental issue with that myth is that it looks at it from a purely anachronistic perspective. The full perspective of hindsight. with stuff like the B-29s being modified to be able to operate out the Aleutians. And the Americans actually get permission to start flying from Australia and basically everywhere. And what's the island chain in the Indian Ocean?
Maldives?
No. It's in the Bay of Bengal.
I don't know.
But basically, it's an anachronistic view on it of the B-29s would have been able to bomb anyway, so why did we bother? It's sort of anachronistic in the same way that the myth that the Allies didn't actually need to invade Sicily and Italy is. Where if you look at it from a deterministic perspective of the Nazis, in hindsight, were going to be defeated anyway by the Soviets. And the Atlantic Wall wasn't what German propaganda, what Allied intelligence thought it was. I think it might be the Andamans, thank you, Timo. But basically, it's sort of that the myth comes from the idea of working backwards and automatically assuming the nukes are coming, which the pilots didn't know about.
Automatically
and
assuming,
Japanese.
yeah, automatically assuming the Japanese are tapped out, assuming that the war is nearly over, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, when the pilots of the time had no way of knowing that.
Yeah.
It's like, on a fundamental level, did the Allies need to go into Sicily? How does taking Sicily speed up the defeat of Germany? It doesn't. And there's an argument that the Allies could have bypassed the capitulation of Italy, and just gone into France. But to get that argument, you have to ignore all the context in the run-up to D-Day and the defeat of Germany.
You have to also ignore the disposition of forces and where the Allies were, where Allied logistics had been building to that point. Where,
Yeah.
like, you know, like, why go into Sicily? Simple. All our shit's already in place. All of our supply lines currently flow into the Med. We have naval supremacy in the Med. We have air superiority in the Med. It's all there.
And Iwo Jima and Okinawa were the same. Because, fun fact, you wanna know half the reason that Okinawa was targeted? Because the planners were planning for a long war with Japan.
They wanted to flatten it.
What's that?
They wanted to flatten it. The part of the thing with Okinawa was to bring the bombers that were being used in Europe against Japan. Like, I don't think people realize the level of flattening that was going to take place. We're talking...
But-
We're talking about aircraft numbers that are going into the tens of thousands each day, dropping ordnance on Japan.
But a big thing is that the US Army Air Force predicted that to get the entirety of 8th Air Force and the European Bombing Force to operate if they hit southern Japan, they would have to take both Okinawa and Taiwan and base out in northern Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
So in hindsight, you could argue that Iwo Jima and Okinawa aren't needed. In reality, and because these people didn't know the nukes were coming, that's what myths like this always forget. people of the time did not know about the nukes. It makes sense. They would have been needed if they hadn't had the nukes.
Yep.
Sorry, I know it's really rambly.
No, it's fine. You did a fantastic job of explaining it. Well done. Typical gunnery officer. Oh, it's the Dutchman!
Hello.
Typical gunnery officer. Crikey, he's really on a roll. Question 9. Do you think the A-10, in case of a full-blown war in West Germany in the late Cold War, is more of a launch platform for the AGM-65 Maverick, since it's the most effective AT weapon? That would have been one of the A-10's roles, yes. Would have been the Maverick truck. But let's also not forget that the A-10, even at that point, given the sort of war they were fighting, given the sort of everything behind X line is an enemy, therefore the whole, and the bets are off when it comes to releasing ordnance, and the somewhat looser rules of engagement that sort of war would have had, the A-10 would have been very nice at just punching through, or going through a hole that had been punched in Soviet air defenses, and just going, oh, that's a nice convoy of trucks, Bert. That's a nice convoy of trucks, bombs away. That's a nice column of troops formed up for a road march. And just being a nuisance until it gets shot down or returns home. And just being this continuous, constant thorn the Russians have to deal with. Their attrition rate would have been fucking horrendous, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I mean, fair. Attrition in the air during a full-scale hot war between the Russians and between the Soviets and NATO would have been, we can't even imagine. The attrition rate for aircraft and pilots would just have been insane.
I mean, it would be second only to World War II.
And that's only because the numbers of aircraft are less.
Yeah.
So in short, it would not be a very fun time.
But the A-10 would absolutely be something that the Russians are going to have to try and counter. And here's the thing. You've got to bear in mind that NATO's policy was remove air defense. That was something they had plans to systematically try and do to open the way for their air power.
Okay. So the way I've had this described to me is, so everyone here knows what a rotary sander is.
Yes.
Imagine the US Air Force and the Soviet Air Force are 2 blocks of wood. The war's gone hot, you turn on the sander. You push those blocks of wood into the sander until they're all gone. The side who wins is the side who still got some of that wood intact, and that hasn't been turned into sawdust.
Yes.
It's less of a fight, more of a try not to get your entire air force turned into sawdust. And the A-10s, designed as a role, was Maverick, gun bombs,
Rocket pods.
guns, rocket
Bert.
pods. Basically, if the A-10 got its ordnance off and then took a high-end Soviet flying telephone pole to shoot down, the A-10 has done its job. Because that's a telephone pole that's not being fired at the aardvarks.
Or if the A-10
At
has...
the B1s.
Yeah. Or if the A-10 has made a Soviet mobile gun system like a Shilka or a Tunguska expend ammunition to shoot it down, when that Tunguska or Shilka gets to the front line, it'll have less ammunition, which means it will be less viable in combat for less time. And and NATO attack helicopters only need one gap, one moment where one gun system runs out of ammunition and leaves one area of a Soviet advancing column or advanced or frontline attack open, and that's all the time they need.
And because it's very easy to think that the A-10s in the Cold War would have been going in when talking about Shilkas and the close-in air defense, that they would have been going in one at a time and they would have got shot down by a Shilka. No, this...
The Shilka might get the... Like, thing is... But, like, bear in mind this...
Shilka will get one.
Yeah, the whole point.
Another A10's gonna maverick it when it does, or it's gonna harm it when it does.
And it's not even that, Foxo. Shilka is the sort of thing that the 30 mil will just go, "You're fucking dead, mate."
But it's like you'll have the A10s doing their attack, and you'll have some of the squadrons still high with mavericks or harms. Then when the air defense opens up, they fully fire at the air defense.
Yeah, and
It's
I mean, and that's if the wild weasels haven't suppressed it already.
And that's like, those together mean that when the attack helicopters come in, when the fronts actually meet, that's one less shulker that will hit the Apaches.
Yeah, and I mean,
And the Apaches are some of the most lethal tank killers of the Cold War.
yeah. I will
People
also.
like to put the focus on the F-15s, the F-16s, and the Aardvarks, and the A-10s in Desert Storm. No, the most lethal and dangerous thing are the Apaches,
Yeah.
the gunships.
What I would also say as well is that you've also got the thing that a lot of the A10s, like the A10s, the Alpha Jets, the Harriers, all these aircraft that are literally designed to, we're going to war. Your life expectancy is this. Have fun. Bear in mind, we discussed this on Monday. That's kind of the whole thing with those aircraft. They are expected to just be the first part of the woodblock that gets torn away by the sandpaper. But what they do to try and mitigate that is they come in at literally treetop height for the most part. The A10s with Mavericks are a little different, but for the most part they're down low. Bear in mind, this is why Foxo says the Shilka's only going to get one, because 3 Alpha Jets, 3 Harriers, 3 A10s come over a tree line a kilometer away from your position. The radar's got to acquire, turret's got to turn, that takes 10 seconds. Acquire, lock, fire your first burst, that takes 40 seconds. You've got 20 seconds left. You've got 20 seconds left till they're overflying your position, and they've already released their ordnance. And
That's if they don't know where you are, and that's also assuming you kill on first burst.
Yeah.
Which very rarely happens.
Yeah.
Even for radar guided SPAA, because countermeasures.
Yeah.
But I'll point out that the Tornado and the Tornado ECRs, they're different. They're not designed to be attrition assets.
No. When we're talking about attrition assets,
because they're a part of the nuclear deterrence at this point.
Yeah.
But as for the original question of, they were part of their doctrinal use was to make sure the nuclear capable tornadoes got through.
Yeah.
And as for the original question, the A-10 wasn't just a Maverick truck. It was some of the units will have Maverick, some planes will have Mavericks, some will have dumb bombs, some will have rocket pods. Basically, Mavericks and everything else the airfield had that had already been bombed to shit.
Uh-huh.
Although they did like their Mavericks.
Yes.
They did like their Mavericks.
Because Maverick is just a giant fuck you to anything that isn't anything. It's a fuck you to anything.
Yeah.
Although if you are a warship, it might take multiple of them to make you be fucked, but it will still be a fuck you. It just might take 3 or 4.
That's the Israelis.
Typical gunnery officer asks, good lord, it's all typical gunnery officer. If they are forced, can you use the America class or Wasp class LHDs in sea control config as an escort or even light carrier to protect convoys crossing the Atlantic with F-35Bs? Please put down Red Storm Rising. Please put down Red Storm Rising. That is, the Russians are not going to come after Atlantic trade. No one is coming after Reforger. No one is coming after resupply to Europe. No one is doing that. This is not something that exists anymore. There is no threat to transatlantic trade in a war gone hot in Europe, and there hasn't been since about 1965.
In retrospect. So now the Soviets dropped it. The Allies didn't think the Soviets had dropped it. Okay. So
Also,
If
I wasn't
we
done. I wasn't done.
Because I just okay.
First of all, protect from what? What do you need the F-35Bs to protect from? There's no asset that can come down there and realistically threaten convoys that requires an F-35 to deal with. The backfires don't have the legs anymore, and their fleet's basically fucked anyway. They don't have the tankers. Bears just fucking die to Arleigh Burks for days and don't carry the missile load.
They don't like the Burks, they like the Perrys.
You get what I mean, but the Perrys don't even need to fucking
Yeah.
exist anymore. So why do you need the F-35Bs? Secondly, the Wasps and the Americas are LHDs. They're not carriers. And this is something that I keep having to bring up with people. They are not carriers. They are not escort carriers. They are not light carriers. They do not have this mythical sea control config. They are landing helicopter docks. They are a crucial, needed part of US war planning for that role. That is what they exist to do. They are not equipped for ASW work. They are not equipped for air defense work unless it's protecting an amphibious task group. They are not equipped for anything else except to take a bunch of guys, stuff them into, in terms of a conflict. Again, China. Okay, I should add the Pacific into the question. Okay, again, even so, China is not going to come out and hit convoys. They're gonna have a hard time getting past the first bloody island chain in Taiwan. Never mind breaking out any further than that. To actually realistically threaten supply routes in the Pacific. And if they do, then the US has carriers, they have destroyers, they have things far better equipped to deal with the only threat that could realistically break out to do that, which is nuclear submarines, than one of America's very valuable LHDs that they're probably going to need carrying troops to go land and blow up Chinese islands. Carrying F-35Bs, which can't even deal with submarines. Sorry,
Yeah, the best way to counter a submarine is another submarine.
Sorry, I know
The US has plenty of them.
I know I am kind of shutting the door on this hard, but it's just one of those things that you really do have to slam the door on because it just completely misunderstands how modern naval war works.
Yeah, but hypothetically, it's possible. Technically. It just depends how far you stretch the definition of carrier.
I mean,
Because if you're willing to accept a limited capability with VTOL aircraft, say you just need something that can carry a couple of jump jets for air defense, or I don't know, say stuff's gone so bad in the Pacific that the US is scrambling, because it took all its troops there, and they're scrambling to have some air power in the Middle East, let's say. Say six fleets gone off to fight.
I'm in a scenario where I'm the US and I'm running out of carriers. Before I try and cobble together some sort of sea control config from an LHD, I'm
which
going
are
to
very
ask the
valuable.
British to borrow a QE.
I'm sorry, we have partners.
But I'm more talking about the actual technical side of things here.
Right.
You can, and it's been shown you can do it with large vessels like oil tankers. You can, like they did to Arctic Conveyor, convert them into a very primitive form of carrier. And the LHDs come at least with more of a flight deck than Arctic Conveyor did. And the Royal Navy, in a matter of months, got her being able to launch, recover, and refuel Harriers. If the Americans needed it, they absolutely could hypothetically convert the LHDs. Will they ever do this? No.
The LHDs are far
Purely
more
because
useless.
Time
Hang
if
on, let
you're
her
at
finish.
the, no,
Let her
if
finish.
you're at the point where you're looking to convert an LHD into a bastardized carrier, you would just take an oil tanker.
Because the
You would
LHDs.
just take a large roll-on, roll-off
Yeah.
cargo ship.
Yeah.
Because
So-
they can do that conversion better because of their sheer fucking size. There is, even from a technical level, I'm not talking to anyone here in particular, but it's just a really annoying question of, on a technical level, it is possible. Is there ever a reason to do it? No. Because you've either fucked because you've run out of carriers, or if you're not fucked but you desperately need flight decks, you're much better converting a merchantman.
Because quite frankly, the LHDs are, they're not flight decks. They're flight decks over a landing dock. They're there to do a job. A job the US needs them to fucking do. They are not available. They are not free.
Yeah. I
But
know it's not
typical gunnery officer,
practical, but
you're
I am
talking about
wondering
putting,
now.
you're talking about put 12 Seahawks or 10 to A F-35Bs. Why would you put them on an LHD when you would just Atlantic conveyor a cargo ship,
Yeah.
which would be quicker?
I am wondering, how much difficulty would it be, and how fast could it be done to fit a ski ramp to an LHD?
You don't need ski ramps with F-35B. Not with the way the US
I
uses
know,
them.
but it does
But-
increase their payload.
But you're still rebuilding the flight deck, which is going to take a month or so.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're fucking Atlantic conveyor a merchantman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to have more volume of flight deck for you to use. So in that hypothetical, you're using them for ASW for some reason, they could actually carry quite a lot of ASW helicopters
Yeah, this is the thing.
Yes.
You
and
don't
supplies.
you don't need the F-35Bs. Also, politely, you don't need the F-35Bs. There's no scenario
No, you
in the
really
Pacific
don't.
in the Pacific where China is threatening supply routes with anything other than subs. They
Unless
don't.
they're broken through the island chain
Atlantic.
and taken Taiwan.
Yeah, even then, H6 doesn't have the legs.
Yeah.
And they
at that
cannot
point-
and they cannot stage their tanker fleet in such a way,
And-
having taken Taiwan,
And
that they
again,
could use it.
before I try and bastardize an LHD, I'm going to ask for, a QE, or I'm going to ask for CDG to turn up.
The Australians are also there. They have fucking Canberra,
Yeah.
for God's sake.
And
I'm gonna
if
ask
it-
for
yeah,
one of the
and if-
Japanese ships.
And if they're already engaged, which in the war in the Pacific they would already be engaged and deployed, if needs be, you can go to Maersk and go yoink,
I mean, politely, it's not
like
even.
what the British did, and the Americans did to a lot of merchant ships in the Gulf.
Puts out a good point. The mothball fleet.
You have all these other things before you start using LHDs.
Yeah.
And if you're out of large merchantmen, you're out of ball carriers, you're out of actual fleet carriers, the SS
At that
The-
point,
the
I have to
TVNs
ask
are
why
all
you're
dead.
Still prosecuting this war.
your allies' fleets are all dead. Both Charles de Gaulle, Prince of Wales, and Queen Elizabeth are at the bottom. And the nuke boats are all at the bottom. How the fuck are the LHDs not at the bottom?
Yeah. At that point, I seriously start to question why you're still in this war.
I am trying to figure out how. Yeah. There's just. Yeah. There's so many better options than taking a ship that
Yeah.
that in a especially in a Pacific War context, the LHDs are fucking worth their weight in gold. I would even go so far as to say they might even be worth more than the fucking nuclear supercarriers. But the
I
especially
won't go
for,
that far. I won't go that far.
you can't
Because
really
two
leave
SS, two CVNs could do the air defense of Taiwan.
No, that's not. No, Fox. That's not what I mean. Any counterattack that the US is going to launch to retake any lost territory doesn't happen without them. And that's why they're worth
Yeah.
more than supercarriers. Sure, the supercarriers can lay the groundwork, but without the fucking LHDs, it ain't fucking happening.
Yeah, but the super carriers ensure the environments when that you can do the counterattacking. If you try and counterattack without the super carriers or the
Are there
LHDs,
any
they just get
LHDs in the
sunk.
mothball fleet?
Anyway, moving on.
There's never enough of them.
Yeah.
There is never enough of them.
Typical gunnery officer asks, what is your opinion on the early basically, what is your opinion on RIM 7 Sea Sparrow? Do you think it's not a good sea-based missile derived from an air-to-air missile? Has a low hit probability from a naval standpoint. Also, it's outdated for the 2000s. Well, first of all, in regards to the latter part of that question, that's really to answer. Yeah, of course, it's a little long in the tooth for the 2000s. It's a fucking 60-year-old missile at this point. So, RIM 7 Sea Sparrow came in the late 60s, I believe, in its earliest forms.
It's the same way the Phoenix came in the 60s.
No, but what? Okay.
And the AM9 came in the 60s.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm
The ship of
thinking of
Theseus
the.
missile.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Sorry, yeah. 1976. But yeah, no, there is nothing wrong with RIM 7 Sea Sparrow at all. Sea Sparrow is it's still a competent point defense missile, and if it's in its later versions, it's a competent medium range missile. It's good in both roles.
It might be less capable than Asta or Standard Missile.
That's not surprising though. Those things are absolute
Yeah.
top of the line.
But look at what Sea Sparrow has been deployed upon. And for those vessels, it's very much a case of Sea Sparrow is better than nothing.
I would also point out that there's also Evolved Sea Sparrow as well, which really did bring it into the 21st century.
Yeah. All of the missiles are ship of Theseus. The modern AM9 has nothing to do with the original one.
You've also, Evolved Sea Sparrow is just, yeah. Evolved Sea Sparrow just goes, I'm going to fucking murder you with a sledgehammer. I'm coming at you at Mark 4. Fight me. It's, yeah. Yeah. Evolved Sea Sparrow just says, fuck you. Although...
So for context, the lines of circuitry in the original missiles was easily readable as a circuit diagram by the human eye.
Yeah.
You have to put the modern circuitry under a fucking microscope.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have...
You've gone from millimeter circuitry to nanometer circuitry.
And bear in mind, there is an advantage to a mature system as well. Evolved Sea Sparrow, in its standard form, can reach out to 50 kilometers at Mach 4. CAM, which is what MBDA and the British are developing, which we have basing in CAM-ER, its base version only reaches out to 25 kilometers and does Mach 3. That's the advantage of starting... Sorry, the disadvantage of starting later. We've got a capable missile because of our tech, and we're going to make it even more capable. But the level of capability you can build into a mature system by upgrading rather than starting from scratch is shown in weapons like Evolved Sea Sparrow, SM6, etc. They are what maturity grants you in the modern era. Sheer, pure capability. Anything you want to add to that, Foxo?
Yeah. It's just with these systems, always remember, they're not the same as the ones from the 70s.
Okay, you know, I am going to put a memorandum in place, and the reason I'm doing this is because I've just had a look, and every single question bar one is gunnery officer. And we've
Yep,
just
we've dealt with this before.
we've just done we've just done 7 questions in a row. So
I mean, I'm enjoying them. So.
they are.
Well, no, it's more just a case of normally when we've done this when we do this
We need
previously,
to
we
get
have
some
to.
other people's questions.
Yeah, the
in
problem
here.
is there is no other questions, Terrence.
I do see one. And it is a decent discussion question because it's an opinion piece, and that's actually a pretty good opinion piece.
Brandon's.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good opinion piece actually. So, Gunner Officer, I'm gonna park those questions until either Monday or next Friday, and I'll insert them between other people's questions. I'll leave them yellow dotted so I don't forget, but I don't want to have this just be Gunnery Officer's catch-up ramblings. It's not exactly fair to everyone else, especially not to poor old Brandon, whose question we might not otherwise get to. And I think Brandon's question is... there's 2 of the Gunnery Officer's questions after it. 3.
Okay, so, addendum. Do we want to do everyone else's questions at this point?
No, that's literally...
And-
Brandon Larson's is the only other one.
Okay,
I think there's
because they have...
there's like another 10 gunnery officer and 1 other person's. like
Okay, do we
11.
want to do Brandon Larson's and
That's
then
literally...
pick out any
That's
of the
literally...
rest of the gunnery that we want to talk about?
Yeah, that was literally what I was going to suggest. So anyway,
Okay.
Brandon Larson asks, in an alternate reality where the Cold War never ends, what would the balance of the composition of the Royal Navy, US Navy, Soviet Navy, and People's Liberation Army Navy be in the 1990s up to the present day? So the first one is... The last one is actually the easiest to answer. The People's Liberation Army Navy's trajectory hasn't changed. They were on the same path in the 90s that they are on today.
China is doing and has done better than really anybody else on the world stage, and it's the reason they are where they are is long-term planning.
The PLAN in the PLAN's history in this alternate timeline where the Cold War never ends is identical to the one we see today.
Yeah.
Literally identical. There is no... They're building a first-class navy. What you need for a first-class navy doesn't change just because the Cold War hasn't ended. Ended.
They might
Okay.
they might bring in a few
Right.
like tech transfers from the Russians, but that's about it.
No. Right, so on a fundamental level, we need to fundamentally understand what is the Cold War not ending. Are we talking the Soviet Union doesn't collapse in 1991?
That was going to be my next question: is how does this scenario come about?
I assume...
Because the Cold War didn't end in 1991. It ended in 1986. When the Soviets backed down and asked for American economic aid. And the Cold War ended because the Soviet Union couldn't sustain it.
So the question is, how does this scenario come about? Did Reagan not open the economic tap all the way, and thus the Russians were able to start saving some money, or some other scenario? How did this come
Because
about?
Reagan's effect is often massively overblown. The issue is that with the increasing complexity of economies as you enter the digital era, I say digital as in the 80s and the 90s computerized, what we'd call cybernetics in the study of Soviet studies. Basically, it's the failure of the planned economy and the Soviet method of organization. Reagan just exacerbated the process by making the Soviets even more reliant on oil money. Then the oil market crashed. So it's a really hard question to answer because a Soviet Union that's in better shape and doesn't economically die when perestroika comes in runs into the issue of now you're rewriting the Stalinist Soviet Union and the recovery from the Great Patriotic War.
No, I know. Look. This is one of those ones where I'm going to pull an actual host move, and I'm going to say, look, I know that Foxo is entirely valid in this situation, but just for once, I'd like to have a good old classic ramblings discussion without us worrying about the details.
But wait, but no, you have.
I'm building up to a question, which is, how are you going with? The Soviet Union is decrepit, but in a better position, so the markets don't crash. We continue chugging along in second place, but chugging along. Or are we talking something that happens in the Fallout timeline, for example, where the Soviet Union lasts long enough to be superseded as number 2 by the rising People's Republic of China, slips into third place, and then slowly westernizes and breaks down? While the Cold War shifts from being America-Russia to America-China.
I think it will probably be the latter. So the Soviets are still the Soviet Union exists. I say it still exists, but by the 2000s, 2020 period, it's probably navally
It's sort of
ahead.
bowed out.
It's probably navally ahead, but that's only because of the head start they had. In terms of basically everything else, China's ahead of them. Technologically, militarily, economically, they're the real threat America's looking at. Sure, the Russians are running around with 4 carriers, 2 of which are nuclear supercarriers, but they can't replace them, and keeping the current fleet they have going is basically taxing the Soviet economy to its limits.
So we'll be looking at a Soviet Union that's in third place and has dropped out of the Cold War, that has lost the Warsaw Pact, because I can't see a way of stopping Germany reuniting.
Germany, yeah.
So, which means they've lost Poland and they've arguably lost the Baltics and a good chunk of the western half of the Soviet Union.
I would probably say the Soviet Union, in terms of the territory that it controls prior to its disillusionment, Baltic states excluded, because that's the one place they probably can't hold on to, but Belarus, Ukraine, the Caucasus, the steppe, etc., that is all still in.
Steppe, I can understand that being under Soviet influence.
I can also see
the most
Warsaw Pact becoming somewhat looser.
Oh no,
because that just outright collapses.
yeah, but
When
basically,
with German unification and Poland goes, fuck this, I'm out. Hungary goes, fuck this, I'm out, and everyone else, the Czechs go, fuck this, I'm out.
basically the Soviets, the Soviets are sat there going, "We exist, congratulations, hurrah, this is brilliant." And
Yeah,
we have
so-
we still have our army, and we still have our navy, and our economy is mostly chugging along. And our
Because unless we're replacing the Soviet Union with an OC, if it chugs along long enough for China into the 2010s, it's going to be a slow collapse versus a quick collapse. Which means that China's, over the period of 20 years, superseded them. Which means the Soviet Union's basically getting the British Empire treatment. With NATO on one side, China on the other. That's just how great powers cannibalize each other.
I mean,
So, if we're assuming that America never comes off the Cold War footing, right?
yeah,
You don't get the Gulf War. Because fundamentally, the First and Second Gulf War are the recoil of the world shifting to a unipolar axis for a while. For a unipolar system. Where
Yeah.
the Americans are the only superpower. Which allows the Americans to throw everything they were planning to throw at the Soviets at the Iraqis, and look what happened.
I mean,
So you don't get the Iraq War.
no, you don't get the second one, but the first Gulf War, you probably might still get.
Yes, but it won't be the first Gulf War as we know it.
No. Well, there might be the somewhat amusing sight of the Soviets also showing up. Hey guys, We're still relevant. Honest, Gov. We've committed.
The Russians did. They did.
They did?
Yeah.
What did they send?
They sent supplies and equipment and food, and took part in part of the occupation, the first and the second.
Well, I was more referring to them actually showing up. The Soviets going, hang on, whoa. I know, like the Soviets go, whoa. You ain't, we're bullying a minor power for invading somebody? And it's a guy that we actually could probably bully some more once the US is gone? Fuck yes, we're in! So, the fucking second guard shows up. which might lead to the somewhat amusing sight of Abrams and T-80s just casually smacking Iraqi
Probably won't see.
T-72s.
You could probably as much see the Red Air Force. You did probably the Red Air Force at most, operating out the Caucasus.
That's
and just
still funny.
deciding to bomb Mosul.
That's still funny. That's still funny, though. Just like the bears show up and it's like, surprise, motherfucker!
Fucking A-10s and fucking SU-21s and SU-25s.
MiG-31's just like, like literally the Russians go, the Americans have handed us targeting locations for Iraqi patrol groups. And the Americans like, what do you mean 25 different Iraqi aircraft just went off the air at a moment? The Russians deployed the MiG-31s? Oh, okay.
Okay.
So like, memeing aside.
You would also see much faster NATO intervention in Yugoslavia.
Honestly, you probably have the Russians in there as well, because they aren't friends of
The
Yugoslavia.
Russians were in there.
The Soviets, sorry.
The Russians are the part of the reason the intervention takes so long.
Yeah. And if the Soviet Union is still together, we've still got Gorby in charge, so it'll probably be a much more stable and geopolitically rational.
We don't want you invading Yugoslavia. Bush will go, okay, how about if I give you $20 billion?
Fucking sold.
Yeah, okay, you're free to invade Yugoslavia.
And also Gorbachev will go. The thing is, Gorbachev is smart enough to use all of these crises for his own benefit, or the benefit of the Soviet Union. He is geopolitically smart enough where Yeltsin wasn't.
Yeltsin was smart. He had just been played the worst possible hand, honestly.
Whereas Gorbachev is smart and has a slightly better hand. He has sixes instead of ones. He still doesn't have kings and queens, but he has sixes instead of ones.
He has a pair, at least. Fucking.
Yeah, he has the ability. He has a do something button rather than a do nothing button.
Yes.
Like Yeltsin's sitting at the high roller table and he's rolled a 4 and a 9.
Yeah, like
and the
Gorbachev
cards on the table are neither a 4 nor a 9.
Yeah, Gorbachev has the I can keep the situation stable button. Yeltsin has the everything is getting worse button.
Gorbachev has 2 3s.
Anyway.
Yeah, he has a pair. It doesn't match what's on the board, but it's better than nothing.
You are probably going to see Soviet realignment, and definitely, especially if Gorbachev's reforms actually, because if we are having the Soviet Union survive, Gorbachev's reforms will have time to kick in.
No, it's worse than that. You see a lot more federalized EU.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Although we'll probably opt out of the federal part of the EU because that's just what Britain does. We'll probably still be in the EU.
No. This is 90s Britain. We're all in. We're balls in on the EU. Remember, this is 90s Britain. A part that stops a lot of the federalisation reforms that are proposed in the 90s in the EU. As part of the reason why the EU turns into the Lovecraftian abomination it is today, is because a lot of the will and compression dries up with the collapse of the Soviets.
Because the EU has expanded east. Right, I get it.
Yeah, it's a much. when it's only Western Europe, there's enough. It is
Then
strange.
as the Iron Curtain retreats, then does federal EU start to gobble?
It depends. It depends how thick Iron Curtain pushes east.
Hmm.
Because East Germany just gets knocked. It's the Poles
Obviously.
that are the issue.
Yeah, would the
Because-
Poles want to join a federalized EU?
Well, just
Probably
look
not,
how
would
much.
be my guess, but
Just force.
I don't
Look
know
how
what
much
to
they
say.
fought and they bled to get out of a fourth line block. And now you're asking the Poles to give up their independence that
Yeah.
they just won to join the German in the 90s.
So, first, let me just say a few things. Having studied late-era Soviet shipbuilding for the Red Fleet timeline, they had a few plans that they wanted to actually put into place that were very much rationalizations of the Red Fleet. They never got a chance to do them because the Soviet Union collapses. If it's slow collapsing or stabilizing and slowly starting to attempt to remove the rot, which is going to take fucking decades, then they're
it's
going to get.
contracting, I would say.
Then they're
but-
going. Then that's what that looks like. If the Soviet Union stabilizes and starts to remove the rot, they contract first, and they stay that way. So there was a plan to build a new class of destroyer to replace, basically Soviet Burke equivalent, but not the same. So it's not for the same role. So it's a class of destroyers in two versions to replace Sovremeni and Udaloy. That was supposed to be equipped with VLS in full. You'll probably see those get built, and that will blanket. And the plan was that while it was a replacement for Sovremeni and Udaloy, the first things that will go will instead be the Krivaks and the older ships like that.
So it's a blanket replacement for the whole destroyer fleet, basically.
Basically, yeah. But the Sovremenis and Udaloys will be kept around as they still have life left in them.
Okay.
You
until, like, the
will
last
get
few of the
4 Russian
classes.
carriers. So you will get 2 conventional carriers and you will get 2 nuclear carriers. So you will get the full build out of Kuznetsov, and you will get the full Kuznetsov build out, and you will get the full Ulyanovsk build out.
Do they sell stuff to India and China in this time?
Oh god, no! Arms exports will still be a massive part of Soviet thinking. In fact, shipbuilding will be. You'll basically have the Soviet shipbuilding renaissance and export renaissance that you had in the mid-noughties and pre-Russian annexation of Crimea, just happening in the 90s, just starting earlier. Because the reason that India bought things when they did, and that the Soviet shipping industry took off in the 2000s and in the period from the 2000s prior to the Russian annexation of Crimea, is that the Russian shipbuilding industry recovered by the 2000s and was able to start exporting again.
So that begs the question, does that change any of the PLAN's trajectory?
So
I just need to contest Fleet's point there. A lot of what allows the Russian export industry to massively grow is the mass recapitalization that happens with the death of communism, and the massive conglomeratizement under the Russian government, where they basically went full ANCAP for 15 years, where anything and everything is for sale. And B, a lot of the reasons why countries like India and China continued to buy Russian armaments and ex-Soviet armaments was because of the massive illegal arms trade that popped up in the late 80s and 90s, where everyone was just looting and selling off what remains of
Um,
the Soviet state. It's how India got access to a lot of its earlier T-72s.
I'm just going to point out something. You're not wrong. Not even slightly. But I was specifically, in order to avoid the mess that is that, I was specifically and only referring to Russian shipbuilding and ship exports. Because that is the one thing for which we have a relatively solid grasp on what happened. Yes, I'm aware. Yes, I'm aware that. One second, I'm nearly done. I'm aware that yes, Russian shipbuilding also suffered the same recapitalization and other problems that other parts of Russian arms manufacturing did, but part of that was due to the loss of key links that were once inside of national borders that were now no longer inside of national borders. And that was something that had to be recapitalized and changed, and those links had to be rebuilt across national borders. There's a reason why this honeymoon period died after the annexation of Crimea, because those links were once again shattered. However, in this timeline, those links do not have to be rebuilt. They still exist. Soviet shipbuilding was one of the areas of the Soviet economy that did function on a reliable basis. They were churning out ships on good timelines with good build quality. It's something the Soviets got quite good at.
Honestly, the final.
Hang on.
generation
Foxo did
Soviet
have
stuff-
something she wanted to say. 1 second.
Because, especially in the Cold War, the question I would ask would be, how many, for Russian shipbuilding, how many of those contracts and those orders were born out of the fire sale of the 90s when it came to equipment?
Not that many.
Where it was a case of, we're already using stuff, we've already got this professional working relationship with the Russians, we believe we can trust those people, therefore we'll buy shit off them. Again.
As far as I'm aware, I have done a little bit of digging into this, and what I found backs what I'm about to say up, but if anyone else has any sources that contradict me, I'm more than happy to read them. As far as I'm aware, the Russian ships that are sold in the period from the 2000s through to the pre-annexation of Crimea are sold mostly on the merits of the design themselves, not on any pre-existing relationships. Since a lot of the relationships are built around Air Force and land-based materiel, and new relationships have to be constructed with the navies of the countries in question in order to get them to recommend to their governments that orders be placed. So, I see no reason that the same cannot happen here. You will probably see Soviet assets go up for sale that we don't see historically go up for sale. So, for example, I do reckon that in order to raise foreign currency, some ships will probably go up for sale when all of the Kirovs are commissioned, because I bet your bottom dollar we're going to get bloody all of them, and they're all going to stick around. What's the word? Oh, come on, Fleet. Use brain. Nope, brain's not fucking working. Ah, there we go. Oh, yeah. So,
Our brain.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so the thing is, the Slavas. The Slavas are interesting because, bear in mind, the Slavas are still being built when the Soviet Union collapses. Now, they planned 10 of them. I don't think we get all 10. I think you might see the build-out capped at 6 or 8. Which does put them in a very good position in terms of large surface hulls once you add in everything else they're building. Basically the Soviet Navy gets recapitalized in the 90s. It has the same treatment the US Navy gets. Basically because the Russians need it. B, it injects money into the Russian economy. Even if it is state capital, it still injects money into the economy and keeps people employed.
I get where you're coming from, but the entire issue here is that the Russians don't have any state capital to invest in the Navy by this point.
This is why I'm saying that you get 6. Because the contracts have already been issued and the money has already been spent, and we know it, for 6 of the Slavas. So, if the Soviet Union isn't collapsing and it's spending what little it has on recapitalizing the destroyers and finishing finishing what it's already building, that being the Slavas, the carriers, and any new construction is probably submarines, and so any new construction post this is probably for a decent while Gorbachev does Gorbachev things and tries to soft capitalize the Soviet economy, because that's Gorbachev things. That's what he do. You're basically going to see a Russian fleet that, for a very long time, is coasting on a core of probably you have one Kuznetsov active, you have one Ulyanovsk active, and no, sorry, you probably have both Kuznetsovs in reserve, one Ulyanovsk active, and then the Ulyanovsks rotate, and if you ever need to have both Ulyanovsks down for maintenance, then you activate one
I
of the
can't see
Kuznetsov.
Ulyanovsk getting built. That's the issue. She's a lot of capital for a nation with no state capital.
The thing is with the Ulyanovsks, they have. This is the thing. If we're not dissolving the Soviet Union, then we are not. Then we are not providing any reason that the construction of these ships will not finish. Bear in mind
You have good reason, though.
Bear in mind that Ulyanovsk is 40% completed when the Soviet Union falls.
Yes. Okay, maybe at most one. It's like, even if the Soviet Union survives, they have the fundamental level of they have no state capital. They are running a massive deficit.
I mean, that would
And
still
their
give
economy isn't particularly productive. And they don't have an export market for conventional consumer goods. As Russia liberalizes Western consumer goods, Russian, as what happens with the Warsaw Pact, and decimate the civilian economy of the Union. Because that's what they did historically. And you can't stop that. And the issue with having these carriers and the two Ulyanovsk, which are big nuclear-powered carriers, is they cost money. They don't just cost money, they're going to cost state capital. Capital that the state just doesn't have.
I think what you might get is you'll get the Ulyanovsks. You'll get Ulyanovsk completed. You'll get both Kuznetsovs, and then the Russians will basically offer the Kievs for sale, all of them. That not only buys up state capital to keep things going, because it provides foreign currency, but it also massively reduces the crewing requirements for the Red Fleet, which they desperately need. You are probably also going to see some downsizing in the Red Navy, so you're probably going to see the historical massive reduction in the size of the Soviet diesel submarine fleet, as happened historically.
Okay, right. So the issue with the Ulyanovsk is, in the 90s, the Kievs, the Moskvas, the missile cruisers, and Kuznetsov herself were basically just left to sit there for a decade.
Yes, they were.
Where most of the fleet wasn't even crewed.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
You can't do that level of neglect with a nuclear carrier.
No, that's right.
That's a nuclear meltdown waiting to happen.
Yes, that is true.
And so,
we're not looking
as
at
I
a
see it, the
Soviet.
Soviets have a choice.
We're not looking at a Soviet
They get-
Union that's in that level of desperation.
It would still be because we haven't rewritten the 1950s and the 60s. It's just politically hasn't collapsed. Is what we agreed. And quite frankly, we'd have to get MEP up here to stand a chance at understanding the Soviet economy. But
Oh, wait, hold on.
assuming
Whoa,
it's
wait
better-
a minute. When did the stage end?
Wait, what?
When
Did
did
it
the
ever
stage
start?
end? Yeah, it did.
No, I don't think it.
Fleets. The stage was started without conversation topic.
Oh.
Yeah, like you've never actually started the stage. I don't know. Apparently you did, but then also said a close. Yeah, no, the only time you did so was roughly 30 seconds ago, if that.
Oh.
You never actually started the stage.
Oh, strange. Well, luckily that everyone heard what I was saying. Eh.
Quite quickly. It's still a Soviet Union with no capital.
Okay. No,
They
I'm going
can't
to.
abandon their fleet for a decade and reactivate it.
I'm
'cause
just
you
gonna-
can't do that with a CVN, right?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you get that. Especially not one with a liquid salt reactor.
The Ulyanovsks do not have a liquid salt reactor.
Oh, there's liquid salt.
No, theirs is not liquid salt. No, there's our conventional KN3s. It's the same reactors that went into the Kirovs.
Then that's even worse.
And I will point out, Foxo, the Kirovs survived the 90s.
Barely.
True, but they didn't have a meltdown, did they? So why can't
It
Ulyanovsk
only
be in
took
the
about a
same boat?
decade of work to get the reactor started again.
It did, but but we can still. I think we can still put Ulyanovsk into the. It's gonna have a shit decade, but there's not gonna be a
But
meltdown.
it's gonna. The Soviets, I think, are going to run into an issue.
Yeah.
Do we
I
keep the
do-
conventional fleet around, or do we keep the nuke fleet around?
Well, I need to quickly address something that Knight said in the channel. Knight, you said that assuming the Soviet Navy is competent, which a lot of the time they are not. I am going to no. The Soviet Navy was for pretty much the entire Cold War, and the Russian Navy still is a competent fleet. And during the Cold War,
Until the 80s.
and was no, but until arguably the decade of the 90s, the Soviet Navy was, and the Russian fleet now is again, a competent peer opponent for the West to deal with. And you neglect that fact at your peril. Do not take the... I keep saying this, me and Alex and Cyclic and everyone else, if we're all barking to the same tune, you know we're right, because rarely do all three of us agree on something, but we all agree on this. Do not take the performance of the Baltic Fleet in the current conflict as any indication of the state of the rest of the Russian Navy. Or its competence. But anyway, you were saying, Foxer.
I say they were incompetent in the 80s because the issues that happened in the 90s are a result of what they fuck up in the 80s. In 86, when the money dries up. and training standards drop like a rock.
Well, I would
And
argue.
time at sea drops like a rock.
I would argue that's
And-
less the Russian Navy and more just Russia generally suffering critical existence failure.
Yeah. But the culture and the ability of the Navy is a direct reflection of the ability of the country.
Oh, she's got a point there.
It's like you don't when someone enters the Navy, they're not completely brainwashed to the country's culture and immersed into a naval culture.
No, this is true. She's right.
It's and navies, especially given how heavily tied they are into economics, unlike armies, get much harder by economics. And you can track the rise and fall of the Soviet Navy by the rise and fall of the Soviet economy. It's shit in the 30s, shit in the 40s. It's starting to recover in the 50s. 60s, with the artificial high, it gets good. Same with the 70s. 80s, reality hits hard.
Well, late 80s.
And shit goes sideways.
Late 80s.
It's sort of... And arguably, you could say the same about the Americans.
Hmm.
The height of the USN was in the 1980s.
Yeah. But just very quickly, so for the 90s, I think, can I nail you down to actually getting both Kuznetsovs and one Ulyanovsk, but still the Soviets suffer from the 90s exist syndrome?
I would say Ulyanovsk or Kuznetsov. Because if Ulyanovsk is around, they don't have the reason to keep Kuznetsov around.
Well, no, Fox always said Kuznetsovs, plural.
Yeah.
Three carriers. 2 Kuznetsovs
I
and one
still think they go
Ulyanovsk.
down to one.
No, if...
Carriers are expensive.
They are, but by the time the money really fucking runs out, they are very close to completing fucking Varag.
The money runs out in 86.
Well, yeah, but yes, it runs out. But they look. We can definitely get Kuznetsov and Varag. That we can definitely get Kuznetsov and Varag. But
Still up in the air.
Yeah,
What
you know what? I will accept. I'll throw you a bone, and in fact, I will agree with you. We'll have a 2-carrier Russian navy. A Russian navy that has 2 carriers that are commissioned and fully completed, but they are both the Kuznetsovs. Ulyanovsk is left on the slips in Ukraine at 40% completion, wondering what the fuck they're gonna do with her.
Okay, I won't go that far. But what I would suggest is maybe either the Soviets sell off a Kuznetsov to get the funding to finish Ulyanovsk.
So basically, they become a 2-carrier. Problem is that no, I mean, Scoot does has a point. The Kievs basically need to fucking. I mean, I suppose if the PLAN is looking to capitalize as they are at the point, if they sell the Kievs to get the money specifically to release the foreign capital required to finish all 3 carriers, which they could do, the Chinese would buy the Kievs. No, Scoot. The Union is intact. It's lost the Warsaw Pact and the Baltic states, but the Union nationally...
It's a crumbling union.
Yeah.
It's dying over 2 decades instead of 5 years.
Yeah, it's nationally intact, Scoot. It's not...
So basically the question is, what if the Cold War didn't have the 30-year break?
Yeah.
From the American perspective. What if the Soviet Union lost long enough for China to rise as the next superpower?
And we're talking about the various navies, and we're still stuck on the Russian one.
The issue is, if Variag worked up an in-service, why would the PLN go, we'll take a Kiev?
Because...
No. We'll pay over market rate, but you give us Variag or Kuznetsov.
Because the
and
Russian...
we will give you the money to finish.
Because the Russians need 3 carriers to replace the Kievs outright, because the Kievs are just a fucking problem. They're not carriers, really, and they're not missile cruisers. With the Slavas coming in, the Kirovs worked up, and the Kuznetsovs finished, the Kievs basically are money sinks that serve very little purpose.
You do
Why would
know
the
what
PLN
actually
want them?
happened to the Kievs, right?
I know. Okay, yes, Scoot, okay, yes, they are technically missile cruisers, but they aren't you know what I mean, Scoot, right? You know what I mean, you know what I'm saying.
But I'm struggling to see, with how the Soviet Union doesn't want the Kievs, why would the PLN pay anything higher than pennies on the dollar for them?
Because the PLAN, in terms of, while they may not be what the Russians want currently, given the way in which the Russians are changing, for the Chinese, they would be very, very useful capability even without being carriers. They would be the most powerful surface combatants in the PLAN by a country mile and a half, and especially if they are sold Baku, easily the best sensor equipped. By a country mile. And
Damn,
and
Baku's
and-
the Chinese instead of the Indians.
and as the Indians have shown, the reworking them is entirely feasible into full-on Stobar carriers, if that is what the Chinese want to do. And they will
Yeah.
like, I'm not saying that, like, bear in mind, it's sort of like one man's trash is another man's treasure in this case. The Kievs aren't bad ships, apart from their propensity to catch fire, which, yes, is a thing. But this is the case of, honestly, a perfect storm appearing. The Chinese will be looking to capitalize to... The Chinese were basically looking for an in into carriers. And
I hard disagree with that point, but alright.
Well, they were at that point in the late 90s.
Yeah, and they got 2, and they didn't even bother commissioning any of them.
Fuck, I forgot
You
about
know
that.
something is wrong when the Chinese bought the 2 ships and be like, we're gonna turn them to the theme
I
park.
forgot about that bit. They actually did buy the fucking Kievs. Shit. Damn it. There goes my whole fucking tangent. Fuck. Okay.
Why would you buy them as carriers in this timeline?
Okay. Plan B. India, you're up next.
Why would the Indians want them?
The same reason the Indians actually wanted them historically.
They did get Baku, but this is like 10 years after.
Yeah, but this time
They
the
got them in
Indians...
2004.
Yes.
So it's you'll have to drum up a reason in terms of how and why India somehow got
Oh,
a
simple.
Kiev earlier on.
Simple. India, for the cost of 1 Kiev, gets 2 Kievs. They get 2 Kievs
Buy one, get one free.
they get 2 Kievs that actually function. Versus having to completely rebuild the ships. Heck, they could even say to the Russians, we'd like you to rebuild these ships as the Russians did with Baku historically, and we'll pay extra for that. If they want to, they may not. And the Russians can finally let poor old fucking ex-Hermes retire to a museum. So, not Russians, sorry. The Indians can finally let poor old ex-Hermes retire to a fucking museum somewhere. And they get 2 carriers. Or 2 missile cruisers with helicopter capability. Or 2 whatever the fuck the Indians want them to be. Baku is capable enough that if a design is worked up for the Indian... Baku is capable enough I can see the Russians keeping her as a deep reserve / in mothball asset. Which could also possibly then end up being sold later if there is a demand from her from somebody.
Sadly, India was very specific about which Kiev they were trying to buy. Baku's the only one that they wanted.
Shit. Okay, big holes in Fleet's plan here. Right, okay.
Yes.
So I guess... fuck.
It took them quite many years for negotiations to finish.
And it also took a lot
Apparently-
of blackmail.
Yeah, apparently negotiations started in '96 when the Russians actually put her in the deep reserve.
Okay, so first things first. So with the Kievs need replacing, so whether they're scrapped or sold, we basically need to get all 3 carriers. Because, yeah, the Kievs need fucking replacing. Because I have mentioned...
They're shit.
Yes, I think that is the best way to put it. They are complete and utter shit. Ulyanovsk is basically capability that if we don't build it while we're building it, we're never gonna fucking get it. Which is, in particular, I'm looking at you, airborne early warning aircraft. So we're kind of stuck with... It's one of those things where the Russians go, we don't have fucking money. We're going to do this anyway.
So we're gonna sell off the Kuznetsov and the Baku to get Ulyanov finished. Because we only need one carrier for presents, let's be real.
No,
They only
no,
kept Kuznetsov around for presents.
no. This is the Soviet fleet, not the Russian fleet. They actually know what they're fucking doing for the most part. They are gonna want 3 carriers.
It's the same officers.
It is.
And it's the same officers and a lot of the same government officials.
Yes, it is, but it's not. That, yeah, but their thinking will be slightly different. It's not.
Yeah, but we know what they did historically.
Yes, but it's not going to be the
We
same.
haven't really
thing.
changed enough that
No,
other side.
I'm going to put my foot down and say no. I vehemently think that
I've also checked the US funding that comes in and would come in at this point. The US threatened to stop economic aid if the Soviet Union finished Ulyanovsk.
Honestly, in my opinion, is best situation would be, or best scenario would be, just having a pair of Kuznetsov.
I
They
think
never
that's. I
finished,
think. I
Ulyanovsk.
think. I will consult the Scot. I will consult the Scot in who is listening. Will 2 Kuznetsovs a fine replacement for fucking 3 Kievs? Can we do that? Can we get away with that? Is that fine? Is that fine? Are we
Military issue they have?
are we
I don't
okay?
think they have much of a choice.
Is this fine? Is that okay? Can I have 6 Slavs as compensation, please?
Oh.
Because to be fair, if you won a unit,
Well, Knight, nobody gets the Kievs. We've basically realised because they're shit.
the thing is, if you
Scrapyards
want
get the
the
Kievs.
unit Gov, you're going to need to basically cancel many other projects that the Russians are doing.
Gunnery officer, Kuznetsov, but the problems never happen because they have 2 of them. Pretty much all of the problems with Kuznetsov can be traced back to her being a one-ship class that has no chance for refit and repair cycles.
No, but that. A lot of the damage that causes her rather spectacular issues is fundamentally comes from the fact that she was basically abandoned for a decade.
Now, we're not saying that this is a Soviet Union that is declining more slowly, so but there is a difference here.
But she doesn't get abandoned.
Yeah,
Which means she's still actually costing money.
Yeah, like, she might be, like, bear in mind, she might be in deep reserve, somebody comes and checks her over every, like, year or so, but she's not abandoned. Neither is her sister.
For example, a part of the issues her engines had was she was basically abandoned with fuel still in the engine.
Whereas now, they can actually go, okay, we're going to have to leave these ships for a while, we can't afford to run them, let's do a proper mothballing procedure, shall we? For our 2 very valuable brand new carriers that we've just finished. Which is good. They can also do the same thing with the Slavas and the Kirovs. So yes, the Soviet fleet will have the same we're all sitting in port doing fuck all moment in the 90s, The difference is it will cost slightly more money than it did historically to do this, but as and when we have the whole okay, we have slightly more money again moment, which we probably will do in the 2000s, as Gorbachev finishes his "I'm funny, look at me, oh wait, we're all still communist, ignore the reforms I'm doing, ignore the fact that you now have money and the ability to choose where you're going to fucking buy your products from. Ignore the fact that there are now corporations that are Russian but not completely state-owned. For God's sake, look at me, look at me, look at the Soviet flag. We're still communist, honest God. For God's sake, fucking look at the flag. Once Gorbachev has done Gorbachev things, by the 2000s, I expect that we could slowly start bringing the Russian fleet back out of deep reserve. By which point, I expect that the core of the Russian fleet will be a Kuznetsov, 1 or 2 Kirovs, probably 3 out of the 6 Slavas, 4 if the economy recovers to a point where things are actually pretty stable. And then you've got the Sovremenis and the Udalois running around as well, along with, all of the Nanuchkas and other bits and bobs.
Okay, quickly. Can we all appreciate how much heavy lifting that if is doing here?
Yes, like, I'm looking at it through my mind's eye. And I'm seeing it straining under the fucking sky like Atlas. I'm like, just...
It's the same if of Angron getting stepped on by a direwolf and barely holding it up to stop Logar getting squashed. That's the level of if this train is under.
So yeah,
Oh God, how many people are able to get that
there's a reason why we're dealing with the Russians first, because they are arguably the most difficult and will take the longest to deal with, and it's taken us this long to get past the fucking 90s. We are now past the 90s. We're in the 2000s. Assuming a Soviet Union, I have to stop calling it Russia because it's not Russia, it's the Soviet Union, that is probably about as well off as Russia is in the 2000s, which is basically a combination of it's the Soviet Union, it's not going to be as efficient economically, but it's the Soviet Union. It still has Ukraine.
Oil prices have recovered.
Yeah, it's still the Soviet Union. It still has Ukraine, the Caucasus, Belarus as part of its national borders. So again, on the one hand, it's the Soviet Union. So shit. On the other hand, it's the Soviet Union. So bigger. Which basically gets us to Russia. Historical Russia. In terms of prices. If not, maybe a little bit more well off.
It's worse than that. It's historical Russia, but instead of fighting a anti-partisan conflict in Chechnya, they're fighting one in Belarus and Ukraine.
Yeah. But,
Don't get me wrong, the Ukrainians and the Belarusians, if they don't get independence in the 90s, are gonna start shooting people for it.
yeah. But...
oh god. Oh god, no.
So, basically
Okay, now,
that's...
right, please question.
Yes.
In the late 90s,
Yes.
how would a superpower China and a superpower America react to both Ukraine, Belarus, and the non-Russian parts, over Russian parts of the Soviet Union in revolt and actually armed uprising?
It's a bit early to call China a superpower in the 90s, but hey.
I'm gonna talk about very late 90s, 2000s.
It's still not a superpower yet. It's definitely a rising power, but
Yeah, China hasn't really become a superpower until the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But how do they react? The problem is, it will be seen as an internal Soviet issue. It's not like the Warsaw Pact. Well, it will be seen in the same way as the Hungarian uprising was. There will be strong condemnations, but it will be seen as an internal Soviet political issue they're dealing with. not something to really get involved with, as it would probably destabilize the situation rather than anything else.
It's not like you could actually do anything. If you go to the UN, the Soviet would just veto you, and if you do anything without the UN support, the Soviet would just be like, invasion, invasion.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that
Is
could actually
inter-
fucking... That's the one thing that could actually fucking unite the Soviet Union behind... Yeah, it's just...
It's just,
Yeah.
you know, it's an internal issue that the US and China is just sitting there like, cool. As long as no further nuclear disaster could occur, we don't really care.
Yeah, basically.
We'll
So...
continue on our own merry way.
Yeah. So, very quickly, moving just to wrap up. So, basically, the Soviet fleet until basically it's the Soviet Union's final collapse will basically be rotationally be a larger pool of Udaloys and Sovereignties compared to historical, 4 to 6 Slavas available at any one time, 2 Kirovs basically are always available at any one time, 1 carrier available at any one time that actually works fully, because we already discussed why that's the case. And pretty much a historical submarine fleet. There's no real reason for that to change. The Soviets were looking to downscale their submarine fleet anyway, and the Russian downscaling basically followed the Soviet plan. So that's...
Miniakulas.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame, but yeah. So next, let's go to the United Kingdom. So, with the Cold
Can we
War,
do the Americans first?
I mean, the Americans is just... The only real difference is you'll get strike crew. Actually, you won't get the strike crew. That was canned during the Cold War.
Or tin cans. Or tin cons, sorry.
No. There's a reason why Burke was spun up. Burke was basically Ticonderoga, but slightly cheaper.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the high-low. It's supposed to be the high-low build. Tincon got canned because the Cold War is over. If the Soviets still exist, they'll just continue with the original build plan.
I'm not sure. Because bear in mind,
They might not build as many Tincon as they originally planned. However, I think they'll build more.
Bear in mind that Tychos have been pushed in, were and have been pushed into the cruiser role, and the
Mm-hmm.
the Arleigh Burkes are now coming in as the destroyers, so you'll still see the Burkes. You will absolutely still see the Burkes, and in fact, I don't think you will see. I mean, for God's sake, they built 27 of the bloody things. 27 of the bloody Tychos historically. I don't see any reason why you really need to change anything. Maybe get 3 more, make the number a nice round 30. But apart from that, you just see the historical build out of Burke. So
This Burke's not the big question here.
I mean, there is always, gentlemen, the fact that while we are talking about navies here, you're going to see F-22 and B-2 fleeted, which is hysterical. And is honestly fucking terrifying.
I mean, to be fair, the scarier thing is the fact that instead of more LAs, Seawolves.
Oh my god, I know.
It's
oh,
gonna
I
be more
think-
than 3.
Oh my
It's gonna
god,
be more than 3.
there's gonna be so.
Oh.
Oh, Seawolf, Seawolf. Oh, oh my god, the Seawolves.
The F-35 program probably doesn't scope creep and stays as a pure jump jet.
Yeah, because you've got
Yeah.
because you've got F-22 as your
Yeah.
your. Actually, you might see F-35 scope creep to become the Calabar carrier aircraft as well, but
No, the F-35 is definitely getting scope creep because it's the scope creep is not from the US.
oh yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, the scope creep is yeah. So F-35 is probably still. It might. Well, there's also the funny fact that F-35 might become even cheaper because people will buy even more of them. So F-35 will become even cheaper than it already fucking is, historically, to buy, which is the funniest fucking thing.
Hey,
But to get back to
on
the
a paint
but
document,
but to
we
get
can't say what Europe's gonna do
no, with the UK.
because pre-expansion, the EU in the 90s very rapidly lurches towards federalisation after the reunification of Germany. And it expands a lot of its federal legislature and its actual power over its constituent country laws. Which we see today.
Oh dear, bloody hell.
This largely was facilitated by the fact the EU was much, much smaller and only consisted of Iberia, France, Benelux, Germany, and the UK. And looking at it, there was significant French support and German support, and support in the lowlands and the British Isles, especially after the crash that came after German reunification in the European market. The issue we have, and this is where the respect of the EU Army, EU Navy, and EU Air Force first gets raised. And it's where it has the most support and actually has a chance of being passed. Therefore, we cannot give an answer for Europe. Because how federalised does the EU go in this time? Are we looking at a pooled system where all militaries are subordinated to an EU command, joint command? Are we looking at a fully federalised EU army that absorbs and replaces all pre-existing Western European armies?
I don't think the British will. I know we're all in on Europe. I'm not denying that, but look.
What is the big issue? The British are the ones who propose it.
I mean, if it gives us control over it, that would be hilarious. Everyone will buy Challenger.
Because it's a way of merging the Bundeswehr and the British, what remains of the British Army on the Rhine. And massively cutting costs, because you don't have to separate base everything. You don't have to double up basing and administrative costs. Which is why the British government in the 90s pushes it late 80s and 90s pushes it forwards. Because you end up with
It's
a
not
situation
that simple, Knight. It's not that simple at all. It's
What's
not...
Nate said?
He said, well, the Type 22 and Type 23 fleets are not cut and we get more Type 45. As,
No,
nice,
okay.
as nice as that would be, I don't think it's that simple.
Because fundamentally, you're looking at a European navy that has the best and the worst of the Anglo-French navies. So you're looking at Europe that wants nuclear carriers, nuclear submarines, a significant standing army, and actually has a unified foreign policy that you probably don't see stuff like MBT-7T and a lot of the France fucks around joint projects that get canned because France is France. And that's part of the reason France should no longer be France. France should become a part of Spain. and Germany
This
and the UK
this
and
this
Belgium
is this
and
is
Switzerland
this
and Italy.
this
Fucking let's just
this-
totally fade France,
let's
okay?
this opinion is Fox's own, is not represented by the rest of the panel. I'm just
France, send your best
I'm
assassins
just-
after me.
I'm just putting
I
that
have
out
a
there.
longbow. I will kick your ass like it's 1337 again.
Oh my god, this woman. Somebody stop her. She's gone a bit doolally. Anyway, so, you've basically got, what was the other, there was another navy we had to deal with. What was it? So it was the US, the UK.
Just the Royal Navy left.
It was the US. Well, that's where we are. The Royal Navy isn't anymore.
A faster rising. Okay, right, Moe, you're more familiar with this. Would a faster rising China cause Japan to remilitarize quicker?
No, I don't see China speeding up its naval
That's, again, Knight.
capability.
Again, Knight.
Look, you have to
what-
understand the reason why China is the size it is today is all down to the 90s. The 90s and the early 2000s, where basically it is basically a free capitalist country in all but name. This is where China is getting all their fucking money.
Well, I would question the definition of the term free. I wouldn't say call the Chinese
Well,
populace
yes.
free, but capitalist, I'll definitely agree with you.
The thing is, it's during the 90s and the early 2000s when there's a lot of internal conflict with the party, and it's just they're basically following along the lines of Deng Xiaoping's reformist line, and there's just generally a lot less restrictions in terms of what they're definitely off a planned economy by that stage.
What I am gonna
Okay,
say,
so
hang
right.
on,
I just want to establish some quickly,
I
please.
need to. All right.
So, do we want to establish that China shifts towards the modern Chinese stance quicker because of the? For the sake of question.
But how?
Okay, as simple as this. The Navy is never going to be a priority unless they turn their entire focus on reclaiming Taiwan. Simple as that. There are much bigger problems at the time to deal with before you get to territorial reclamation. China is not about that in the 90s and the early 2000s at the time. They're more busy. How the hell do we turn our country into a actual country instead of, wherever Mao basically established? Or I shouldn't even say that. It's more like the Chinese officials are has given too much opportunity to corrupt, to cut up their own, little share for themselves, to actually fully care. So there's physically no reason for China to accelerate its naval program compared to what they currently, or compared to IRL, let's just say. Yes, you don't see the really big naval explosion of Chinese ships until Xi Jinping really comes around. And he's the one that really centralizes power back into himself, and he directs. He's the one that basically starts directing the developmental fundings for Chinese forces to focus more on the naval side of things. Although, to be fair, he didn't even start off with that. He wanted the Belt and Road Initiative to work. It clearly didn't. don't like how quiet everyone has gone.
You're talking. We're letting you talk. That's what we're supposed
I
to
see.
do. Shockingly, this whole thing sometimes works. Okay. Right. Okay. Knight. Okay, I'm going to go just a few things. First of all, Knight. The Type 45 is a result of the Horizon Frigate project, and the reason it fails is because for the British have zero to do with the USSR. So the Type 45, as we know IRL, will come about as they do, and we'll get the full 12. This kind of implies you didn't listen to anything Foxo was saying about the unified... Sorry, the federalized EU and the federalized military that comes with it. You know,
It's going to be such a wacky
Which-
thing to deal with.
which, you know, unifies procurement as well as command. Which means that Type 45 and any of the British post-Cold War projects fundamentally don't exist. Because what will replace them will be federal EU projects for the federal EU Navy. The Royal Navy ceases to be as anything other than a component of this federal E EU.
It's just federal EU decided to go with decentralized military.
Which it could do, but I would find it weird if it did.
I don't know. The idea of a fully federalized EU is such a wacky thing to me.
It's so
I
laugh.
doubt
It's
they'll do that.
It's so
honestly.
It's so laughable nowadays. But bear in mind, when we're talking about the EU in the 90s, it's Britain, France,
I know,
Belgium,
it's a-
the Netherlands. It's Britain, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Italy, Germany. It's a
know,
small,
it's a-
close-knit group of Western countries.
I know there's a chance. I'm just saying that there's also that chance that certain countries within this group might constantly throw Spanish into the work. Because let's admit it is still Europe.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just really saying it's really hard to imagine because I can imagine someone throwing in the Spanish when someone say we should do this instead.
It's true.
Every single
Like,
joint EU project ever.
yeah. I feel like we've definitely given that question a fair old shake. So, that is, let's see, what time are we on?
We've got more time. It's
2
a
hours,
Saturday,
two
isn't it?
and a half hours. No, it's a Friday. I have 2 days off, and I am looking forward to having the rest of my first of 2 nights off. So, thank you everyone for coming. As I've said, I'm going to store typical gunnery officers' questions away, and I will put them in on Mondays and Fridays, in between others' questions to make sure they do not get missed. With no question that gets left behind, we just move them around a little bit. That's what we do here. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you Guy. Thank you Turrets. Thank you Dragon. Thank you Foxo. Thank you Moe. Moe and Queso, I'll see you down in Hoi 4 after the ramblings
Oh,
because
okay.
it is time for the funny. Thank you everyone for coming.